Okay, welcome to today's live stream. Let me just make sure everything is looking good for the stream. Make sure we've got sound and everything. Okay, welcome to today's live stream. All right, perfect. So, in this live stream, I'm going to be doing my first figure sculpture using monster clay. Now, monster clay is popular. It's really popular. I think it's quite a bit more popular than the clay that I typically use, which is Chavant medium NSP clay. I take that medium clay and I mix in just a little bit of hard because I do prefer a little bit harder of a clay. I wanted to give you guys my first impressions with this clay and just let you guys know how I feel it performs compared to the clay that I typically use. It's a little bit more expensive, but they're comparable in price. Both of these clays are oil and wax based, so this one feels like it has a little bit more microcrystalline wax consistency than Chavant clay, which feels maybe more beeswax or another type of wax. It feels softer right out of the bucket, so I've seen people melt this down. You can melt this down and then make it completely liquid, but it also softens with heat. And so I prefer a little bit firmer of a clay, but that's fine. We're just going to be doing a figure sculpture. Here I'm going to be using as a reference image. Sometimes when I'm going through Instagram, I just save reference images that I think are insightful when it comes to the figure. This one's a fitness influencer. I don't follow him, but he's got an impressive physique, and it's Jarnson Fitness, Jarnson-Fitness, and so that's a reference image that I'm going to be using. I chose this one because he's like standing in a mirror, so I can see kind of some of the back as well as the front of the torso. That's kind of what we're going to be focusing on, but we're going to be doing the full figure. And so let's go ahead and get into that. As far as materials, again, I'm using the Chavant clay. I have a pre-made wire armature that I've made from aluminum wire. This is probably like 14 gauge soft aluminum wire, and that just gives me kind of a foundation to build on top of. Let's see, I feel like I can move the hips up just a little bit. I'm gonna move the head down. So this armature is kind of like it's support for the sculpture, but then it also gives some measurements. Though I'm looking at where the hips are compared to the hands, and it feels like the hands need to come down a little bit farther than what I have here. So I'm gonna push the hips up a little bit, and that somebody's saying aluminum wire is not good, right? Because it does not rust. Well, rust is a part of it, but it's also pretty malleable. So like copper wire also doesn't rust, it tarnishes, but copper wire is kind of flexible at the beginning, but it work hardens, which means the more you bend it, the harder it gets, whereas aluminum also work hardens, but you can bend it more times without it becoming so hard and brittle that it breaks. So that's why I prefer to use soft aluminum wire for armatures, and why most people most sculptors use soft aluminum wire. So let's just bring down these arms a little bit. We're gonna trying to get the pose about right. Just kind of bend back. I'm gonna be exaggerating it a little bit because that's what I can do as an artist. I don't have to copy this pose exactly. I can have a little bit of liberty when it comes to it, and in fact I think I want to bring the arms out a little bit as well. And we got something that's approximating that pose right there. Let's see, I'm actually going to, so here I have a little bit of the clay, but I'm going to just be kind of scooping strips of it as I'm working, but I'm going to put this down below just because it's kind of getting in the way. So I am using This is Monster Clay medium, and first impressions, I feel like maybe I would like to try the hard and maybe mix medium and hard just a little bit, because this does feel a little bit soft for the size I'm doing, which is kind of a smaller size. And if I was using the hard clay, I could heat it up to make it softer, but just at room temperature, this feels just a little bit soft for my liking, but that's fine. We will sculpt with it, and that's something that I can just keep in mind later on if I purchase more of this clay, to maybe get some hard clay and mix it in with the medium. Maybe even to mix half and half, hard and medium. Oh, the person saying, sorry, I meant to say aluminum wire is good. Yes, I like aluminum wire for that reason, because it is because it doesn't rust, and it can bend several times before it becomes so brittle that it breaks. So I'm just scooping up these kind of coils of clay. Let me just get a bunch of those, and then we will keep going. Let's see, I can bring it up so you guys can see. So it's pretty soft. It's not soft enough to where you could just like go in and grab the clay, but if I'm just pulling it with a tool, it's definitely soft enough to oh, whoops, not that soft, just broke a tool. Well, there we go. So it's not that soft, not soft enough to give it all your strength, but let's just get a couple more of these and then we'll keep going. Don't you use putty for the basic shape? I don't. That's not something that I do. I don't know what kind of putty. Maybe like a two-part epoxy. I don't know what type of putty you'd use for. You could use a two-part epoxy if you wanted a more solid foundation, or you could also use aluminum foil. I would probably use aluminum foil, but for this sculpture, I want to test out the clay, kind of the limits and things like that. So I just want to do as much with the clay as I can. Oops. So I'm just going to be basically building out the entire sculpture with clay. I could even try without the armature, but I usually work with an armature. So for a fair comparison, I want to just try to use my normal sculpting techniques with this monster clay, as opposed to the Chavant clay that I usually use. So somebody's saying that that aluminum wire is good, but they use galvanized steel. It doesn't rust, but it does break. Yeah, that's an issue with galvanized steel. A lot harder to work with, so sometimes you have to use pliers with wire cutters to bend things out depending on the size you're working with. So it's a little bit harder to work with, and it breaks a little bit easier. But if you're not going to be constantly bending and reshaping your armature, then it's a perfectly fine option. If that's a wire that you have access to and it's cheaper, which it is, usually it's cheaper, then that's totally fine to use. Okay, let me get just a couple more, and then I can start kind of shaping this into a sculpture. And I'm going to try to see how far I can get in about 2 hours. That's the plan for this live stream, and then I'll edit it together to get a shorter video of my first impressions of monster clay. But I thought I might as well do this during a live stream so that you guys can kind of see my experience. So you can so yeah, a little bit soft. Does remind me quite a bit of microcrystalline wax, definitely more. And it also feels like it has less of a clay body, so like actual clay minerals. It feels like it has very little of that, or at least less than the Chavant NSP clay that I usually use. So, okay, that's some to get started. So let's put that down. Let me make sure. Just make sure I'm in focus before I keep going. Okay. Yeah, and if you guys have questions, I'll try to answer those. And some of this, I might, just be sculpting. Some of it, I will kind of comment on my thoughts of the clay and the sculpting process. But the first thing is wire armature. Then I'm taking this floor sample. This is something that I got just from Costco, these floor samples. I tried to purchase these, but they don't have a way for you to just like purchase a bunch of them. So I feel bad for taking these. They do say free samples, but I don't use them for floor samples. I use them for sculpting. So kind of feel bad for doing that. But I don't even know if they still offer these as free samples. But that's what this is. And maybe they've, last time I tried, they didn't have a way for you to just buy a bunch of them, but maybe they've changed that. Maybe you can just, like for a couple dollars, get a stack of these. And they work great for sculpting. Somebody's saying, hi Andrew, I use the same idea for my armatures when sculpting with plastiline. I use a little Chavant or Monster to stick it to the base, and then a couple of masking tape wrapping. It works great. Yeah, and plastiline is like similar. It's oil based, but it's a lot softer and less expensive. So, but using a firmer clay to kind of stick it to the base, and then using a cheaper clay, that definitely makes sense to me. Okay, so here we go on this. I'm liking the pose. I feel like the gesture is okay. It's a little bit different than the reference image, but again, I don't have to just mindlessly follow the reference. I can change things if I feel like it'll make a better sculpture. Let's see, there's somebody commenting in another language that looks like Russian, so I don't know what you're saying. But thank you for watching. And let's see. I have a question. How hard does Monster Clay get when it cools? So this is at room temperature right now. And this is the medium. So they have medium, soft, and hard. And I feel like I'd like it to be just a little bit firmer for the medium. It feels a bit firmer than the Chavant medium. So that's the one I usually use. And I actually, even with the Chavant medium, I mix a little bit of hard clay in with it because I like it to be a little bit harder, especially for these smaller scale sculptures. So it's a little bit soft. So I would be curious to try the hard and then maybe even mix some hard with some medium. Maybe I'll get some of the hard brown Monster Clay and do like a half and half and see how I like that. But for now, let's just go up and cover the armature with a thin layer of clay, see how it sticks to the wire. And then I like to get to the point where I can kind of do tooled, so I probably won't worry too much about the legs because I'd like to do some. Oh, the person was asking if we speak Russian. No, I don't. I speak Spanish, though I'm not as fluent as I used to be when I would speak more. But Russian I do not speak. Let's see. Oh, so the person saying, yeah, I thought you speak Russian as well. No, just I speak Spanish, but not Russian. So it is good to learn other languages. I learned from your videos. Thanks for the effort. Spanish, all right. Oh yeah, well, thank you for the comment, and thanks for watching. Sorry I don't speak Russian. If I did, then I would speak some right now, and I'm sure everyone would be impressed, but that is not possible. Okay. Somebody's saying I learned a lot from you. Well, thanks. I am glad that there are people out there learning because you put out this stuff and you hope that somebody takes it and uses it. And so thanks for letting me know that you've benefited from the stuff that I've been trying to teach. Hope a lot of sculptors can do that. Let's see, somebody's asking, how do you measure the overall ratio of a character without print, paper, or the same ratio model in case I only have clay, wire, and smartphone? Well, you can do it a couple ways. I like to use a canon of proportion, so I think that's what you're talking about using the same ratio model. So I use a canon of proportion for this wire armature. But when I was doing it, when I was building it, I realized that, let me zoom in just a little bit. I realized that the armature, the torso was a little bit long on the armature, so I just bent up the hips. So I pushed down on the armature, bent the hips. There's other things you can do. You can move up the shoulders or down. So starting with a general canon of proportion and then being able to modify it depending on the model is what I will typically do. Let's see, and can you guys, I don't know if you can see me. Some people say they prefer to be able to see that I'm speaking while I'm doing these live streams, though I don't like that being right there. Let's move this over here. And this one more to the side. Let's see. Somebody else says I speak Spanish. Oh, bueno. Hola. ¿Cómo están? So yeah, we got some Spanish speakers. There's usually a couple. So that's great. Spanish is a great language. A lot more makes a lot more sense than English. English is just a bunch of different languages kind of mixed together. Okay, let's get some more progress. Let's see. Oh, the person that speaks Russian says that they speak English as well, so no problem with that. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, most of the world is at least bilingual, if they don't speak, a couple languages. But here in the U.S., being bilingual is rare. I think there's a joke that says, what do you call somebody that speaks 2 languages? You call them bilingual. What do you call somebody that speaks 3 languages? That's a trilingual or a polyglot. And what do you call somebody that speaks 1 language? An American. So that's a joke that I've heard. It's kind of true. We just speak English, generally, with a few exceptions. Thank you for your work, man. I really appreciate what you do, and also what you say on different social topics. From Russia with love. Well, thank you. That's good to hear. Yeah, I think being able to share, what you think on different things is important. As an artist, I think you should be able to express the ideas that you feel are important. I think that's the whole point of art. So I think it's a shame when artists kind of censor themselves because they, either for political reasons or for social reasons, they feel like they can't say what they actually believe. I think that's unfortunate. So I try not to do that. I try to say what I think and not hide those things, even though it's sometimes not super popular, but that's how it goes. Okay. Mr. Black Cat, monster clay becomes very hard, especially if it's a hard version and low temperature environment. Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure it does. This one, what is this? This is about probably 75 degrees in here. I don't know what that is Celsius, but pretty mild temperature, and it feels pretty soft, a little bit softer than what I like. So I would like to try the hard, and then maybe even mix a little bit of soft with or medium with the hard, and see how that feels as well. And the nice thing about this clay is you can melt it, and so I imagine mixing different types of the monster clay is fairly easy and straightforward. I've also talked to people that prefer mixing monster clay with the Chavant medium NSP clay, and they kind of get a monster NSP hybrid clay that they say is really nice. So maybe I'll even try that at some point. Somebody's saying, I personally started sculpting recently and I didn't know better, Monster Clay hard or Chavant NSP hard, so I tested both, and overall I like the Monster better, but NSP Chavant has its charms, so to say. So I like both. Yeah, the hard NSP is very hard. It's basically like wax. So it is very hard. I like to mix like 1/4 hard with 3/4 medium. That's the mix that I like for Chavant, and that's kind of the hardness that I like. So just a little bit harder than the regular medium. Okay, now let's go ahead and start to build out the primary forms. So I'm going to think about the rib cage, the pelvis, and just start to thicken things up with the back. It's definitely got a thick back, so we can start to pull these things out. And I'll just try to get the mass on there and then start to shape it a little bit with tools, because tooling is one of the things that does make a difference, how easy the clay is to tool. I'm just going to fill in some of this midsection without, because I know that this is going to be filled at some point, so I'm just going to do it now. I'm also going to thicken the legs a little bit. Let's see, so the pose I have, the legs are a little bit closer together. I think I do like that, so I'm just going to move those closer together, keep the arms out and kind of coming forward a little bit. Okay, many people say that Monster Clay is less sticky than NSP, and also that the hard version is a little bit softer than the hard NSP. Okay, yeah. I should have got the soft and the hard of the Monster Clay so that I could test all of them and see which ones I prefer. But the medium, I imagine, is the most used, and so I wanted to just test that one. And I've got a bunch of it, so I can kind of experiment with it and see. And then if I do get some hard, maybe I'll get some hard of the brown and then mix them together so that there's a color difference, and that way I can test how hard it gets. So somebody's asking, in your opinion, what is critical when sculpting an emotional character, the shape when or posing the emotions of the face? Well, I think the main thing is just good reference. Good reference, whether that's using a mirror. That's something that I definitely encourage people to do, is like look at your own face in a mirror. That's something that like Disney artists did. They would have a mirror, and as they were working, they would make the whatever expression it is that they're trying to convey, whether it's like anger or surprise or something. They would just constantly be making all of these emotions in a mirror as they're working, and you should do the same as a sculptor. Just like just try to, let's see, I'm gonna fill in a lot of the space in the legs just to give a little bit more stability, because right now it does feel a little bit wobbly, but that's because the legs are pretty thin. And I feel like this clay doesn't give as much structural support as the Chavant clay. So I've seen when people have worked with this clay as like a time lapse, and then they have like an arm coming out, but it doesn't have an armature in it or something, that it'll kind of slump a little bit over time. So let's see. Monster clay used at room temperature, right? Yes, that's what this is. This is medium clay, so Monster Clay medium hardness, and I'm just using it right out of the container. I've just grabbed some strips of it and just testing it out. This is my first time using this this clay. I felt it before, like some people that have sculpted with it have given me a piece and I've just kind of squished it, but you don't really get a sense of the clay until you sculpt with it and do like your style of, or your work process with that type of clay. That gives you a lot better of an understanding. Let's see, I'm actually going to fill in some of this because he's got like sweatpants on, so there is some separation, but just kind of bring these down. Let's see. Yeah, it cools down with room temperature. Yeah, this type of clay, as well as the Chavant that I usually use, can be melted and poured like into molds and things like that. It's really common to use them for that. Is there a limit to the shelf life of NSP clay? Does it dry out after 5 years, for example? So I have some sculptures that I've started, and what I find is that it does become, it kind of gets like a shell of a little bit harder clay, like more waxy. Like it kind of feels like wax, like candle wax or something like that on the surface. But then if I put new clay on it, it works fine. And if I melt that clay down and reuse it, then it seems to like reconstitute fine. So it does become a little bit firmer, more waxy, but that doesn't keep it from being workable. You just have to like warm it up and maybe like smooth things out a little bit better, or not smooth things out, but just kind of work the surface a little bit, and then it starts to soften up and let's see. Push this forward to make sure I'm staying relatively balanced. What kind of clay do you like the most up to now? Well, that's why I wanted to try this clay, because a lot of people say they like it. It's a little bit more expensive than the Chavant clay. So far, I still prefer my mix of Chavant, like 3 parts medium to 1 part hard. That's something that I've gotten used to, and so I'm probably biased towards, you know, what I've been using for a long time. But I've used that, and then I also use like Dollar Tree non-dry modeling clay, plastiline or plasticine, plastilina. Those are all kind of the same, or different terms for the same thing, which is just like an oil-based clay that's pretty soft, and that works fine. You know, that's it works fine, and I'm able to sculpt with it, especially large scale. I think it's a nice clay for that, and it's, for the price, I haven't found a better deal on clay than at the Dollar Tree. A better deal per pound. It ends up being like, I think $3 a pound, whereas this is like $7 a pound or $8 a pound, or it might even be, I think this one, when I bought it in bulk, so I bought like I think I bought like 20 pounds or something like that, and it was like $7 a pound, or $8 a pound. I don't remember, something like that. So I think did I even answer the question? I just go off. So I think Chavant NSP is what I like, what I've liked most so far. But we'll see. Maybe this, you know, this could change my mind. I'm open to a better type of clay. Let's see. I'm going to push this in again. Let's see, I learned English language so I can speak and understand more people. Yeah, that's great. That's great to do. English is, I think, the most common second language in the world. So it's not the most common first language, which I think is Chinese, just because there's so many people in China and stuff. But if you're going to learn a second language, English is a good one because a lot of people speak it as their second language. So if they don't know your language, your first language, then they might know English. It's possible that they would know English. So that's why it's good to learn English. And I say that as somebody who's biased towards English because that's my native language. Okay, let's go ahead and start. The feet are, they're doing okay. Feels a little bit more secure now that I've thickened the legs up a little bit. Just gonna Somebody's asking, how many years have you studied and worked as a sculptor? Well, I got into sculpting in, let me make sure I'm in focus. So I started sculpting in college, and I guess I guess I'm coming up on like 10 years that I've been sculpting. 10 years out of college, is it something like that? 30. So no, maybe like 8 years, 8 or 9 years that I've been sculpting. But I've always liked art, so I've been drawing, and I've always enjoyed drawing and painting. Art is beautiful. I guess our urge to create is something, to create something beautiful is coming from God. That is what makes us a little bit godlike. Yeah, I think that that's true. I think that God is the ultimate creative force who created everything in the universe, created the universe and everything in it, and that we were created in His image, in a literal sense, in that I think God actually does resemble us, so He's like a being that looks like us, but then also in kind of a metaphysical sense that He is a creative being, and so we are also creative beings, and He is a thinking person with a mind, and that we are also thinking, rational beings with minds. I think that's what it means when it says we are created in the image of God. Male and female. Created He them. So let's go ahead and start to add the anatomy. Okay, let's get the back first. Boop. Somebody says, recently I tried your trick of going to the dollar store and buying plastiline, about 2 pounds, put it in the oven, add some Vaseline, though extremely soft. It's great for sketches. Yeah, I don't even add Vaseline. That Vaseline had probably made it even softer, so I would just do it without the Vaseline, and that might be a little bit firmer. Vaseline will just soften it up even more, and it's already pretty soft, the dollar store one. But you can add wax, like a little bit of beeswax to it. There's a video on the Proco channel of me kind of experimenting with that, so that's an option. And I've also added microcrystalline wax to it, which is a wax. I think they use microcrystalline wax with this. This feels like it's got quite a bit of microcrystalline wax. So, has very little odor. I can't hardly smell it at all. The Chavant NSP has more of an odor. It has a distinct smell, which is not unpleasant. I like the smell. It's not like the sulfur smell of clays of the past. It's just a kind of a waxy, earthy smell from, I imagine, from the clay body and the waxes that they put in it. This one doesn't seem to have that. Seems to be more neutral. The color of this is nice. I really like the gray. It also comes in brown. And there's also just a slight, almost like speckling, like areas that are just a little bit lighter and darker in the clay, which is also a nice feature for the clay, that it's got just a little bit of almost texture to the color, or speckling, like a granite type speckling. Let's see. I always have some across the desk while I work and study. Make the time better. Oh, as far as clay. Yeah. In fact, I find, like, if I'm trying to listen to something, or, listening to podcasts, which I like to do, or listening to, we have a general conference in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints where leaders of the church talk about principles of the gospel and things. And I find that I'm able to remember more when I'm doing something artistic, if I'm listening and creating something, than if I'm just trying to watch without doing anything creative, without doing anything else. I find I listen better when I'm actively kind of doing something on the side. Let's see. So let's broaden out the shoulders a little bit. This guy's got pretty broad shoulders. Let's start kind of thinking about the anatomy. How these forms are. Somebody says, I love monster clay. I didn't know they had gray colored clay. Yeah, I think that's the two colors that they have, just brown and gray. I don't know if gray is I think gray is a more recent thing that they've added, that they didn't have it before. But I prefer a gray to brown, though. I mean, brown is fine, but I just feel like brown is common, and I feel like monochromatic is more in style right now. Monochromatic stuff. Black, white, gray. Let's see. Go ahead and add the trapezius. That's it. Describe the head a little bit more and the neck. And hopefully I'll be able to get to the point where I can start working with tools. It's hard because you want to be somewhat developed when it comes to the figure before you start working with tools. Let's see. Let's see. Somebody's asking if I've ever listened to Orthodox chants, and have I ever seen Orthodox churches, or I imagine been to Orthodox churches. I'm assuming Orthodox Catholic, and the answer is no. I don't think I've been, but if somebody was to invite me, I'd like to. Somebody I knew was saying, like, hey, this is my church. Would you be willing to come and see what it's like, and then I would definitely be willing to. I'd probably invite them to do the same, yeah, because invite them to come and to my meetings. I think that's a good thing, to be able to go to different churches and learn about different worldviews. I think is a good thing. But I listen a lot to Matt Walsh. He's one of my favorite political commentators, and I think he's an Orthodox Catholic, traditional Catholic, and I like a lot of the things that he talks about. Let's see, I keep moving away from, let me just put this where I'm comfortable, and then I'll move this. Let's do that. Okay, let's go ahead and we can start adding in some of the muscles of the back area with lines of clay. Let me go in and grab some tools so that I can experiment with those. Just going to clean off the other clay that I was using prior, so that I'm not mixing the clays, because that can kind of affect how the surface is tooled and the colors and things. So just take a sec to clean these off. And I like I like it. It definitely reminds me of microcrystalline wax, which I've sculpted by hand, but microcrystalline wax does not tool very well. So I'm curious to see how this tools. People have mentioned that this is even less sticky than the Chavant clay that I usually use. And so I'm curious to try that and to see how this works, because just microcrystalline wax is the opposite. It's more sticky. It's kind of more sticky when it comes to metal tools and wood tools, and to the point where it's difficult to even use them. I usually don't even bother using tools. I just do it all by hand. But this, I want to use tools and make sure that it tools nicely. Okay, so we've got this muscle coming on the back. Somebody says, may sound silly, but watching you add the shapes and forms, I realize how important it's the general curvature of the body. Been doing the same anime characters lately, in the line, it's even more exaggerated. Yeah, gesture is really important to get, especially in the beginning, because as we start to add the muscles and things, usually we make things more stiff and more upright. So I definitely recommend pushing the gesture at the beginning to try to get an interesting pose. Let's add some thickness to the back. These muscles, kind of large muscles that go down along the center of the back. So let them go off this way. That center line just helps me judge whether I'm putting these forms in accurately or whether they need to be moved from one side or the other. Somebody says, I liked your channel because you explain things very well, and I'm learning more and more in this world of sculpture and 3D to become a great artist. Well, thank you. I hope that you do become a great artist. We need more great art in the world, more masterful works of art. It makes the world a more beautiful place, more interesting place. And I think it's a worthwhile thing. Though it is sometimes it's hard to justify because it does seem like it's an extra, or like a what would they call it? In the area of COVID, they might call it a non-essential occupation. But I think it is essential in the sense that it's part of the essence of who we are. Essential meaning the essence of, like, what makes a person is that they're creative in ways that animals aren't. So he says, so are you religious then, Andrew, or do you live to the gospel given by Jesus as Savior? Thank you. Well, I don't see a contradiction in those. Are you religious, or do you live the gospel given by Jesus the Savior? Oh, well, so just if I'm religious. Yes, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So Christian, and I believe that Christ came and lived and died for our sins, and that he was the Son of God, and that he prepared the way for us to return to live with God, our Heavenly Father, and with our families if we can just listen to the things that he encouraged us to do, and have faith, be baptized, repent of our sins, which just means changing, and then enduring to the end. So, and I think, when people say, like, are you religious? I think everybody's religious. So even if you don't think you're religious, you maybe feel like you're atheist. Religious just means that you put value in something. So I've never met a person that didn't value anything or didn't have any beliefs about anything, didn't believe anything was right or wrong, and didn't try to convert others to their way of thinking. That's just not something that describes people. So people are religious. that religion might take different forms. It might become, maybe it's not traditional, maybe it becomes political, kind of a political religion or another type of religion, but people are religious. But I'm also religious in the sense of traditional religion, traditional organized religion. Let's see, I see mostly you work by adding little pieces of clay one by one, like all the people that work with NSP, but people who work with monster clay usually carve out the sculpture from a rough form. Yeah, I guess I've seen that, especially with the hard, from what I've seen with the hard, people that work with the hard monster clay. Yeah, they like will go and add it and then do quite a bit of tooling. That's just not my style, so this is just the way that I work. I prefer to do less tooling and do more more building out with pieces of clay. That's just the way I like to work, so I'm just doing this sculpture the same way I would with any other type of clay to give an honest opinion of this material, as far as from my perspective as the type of sculpting that I do. I find that it's just harder to find the forms by removing material. And I do see, like, a lot of people that use this clay, they have a more just a different way of building it up. I think the way you put it is accurate, that they are kind of more adding the material and then removing it with tools. But that's just different than how I like to approach it. But maybe this clay is like more intended for those types of people, so that's why I'm experimenting with it, just to see, well, does it work for my style of sculpting? Somebody says atheism is some sort of religion or belief. Yeah, well, I think even though atheists deny this, because they'll say, well, religion is an organized belief in a supernatural or supernatural beings that you have to appease. But that's their definition. But my definition, is just like and if you look up definitions in Google or something, it just says a religious, like if you believe something religiously, that's just like a sincere or earnest belief in something. And so in that sense, everybody is religious because everybody believes something religiously. They believe in something that cannot be proven, which means that they have faith in something, or they have a belief that can't be proven. Like you can't make somebody believe in God with evidence, and you can't make somebody disbelieve in God, because it is definitely difficult to disprove a negative, to say that God doesn't exist. So they'll say, well, the burden of proof is on you to prove that God does exist. But then the evidence, when you show them, the reasons why somebody might exist, the evidence is that there might be a creator of the universe who actually did make everything, and then they'll say, oh, well, that's not actually evidence, that doesn't prove anything. So that's a choice. People can choose to believe or not to believe, but I definitely don't think that religious belief is inherently what would you call it, illogical. It doesn't have to be illogical. Some religious beliefs are, and encourage you to become illogical or unthinking, but that's not part of my religious worldview. I think you should look at evidence, you should look at science, you should look at nature, God's creation, and the way I see it, and see like how does this fit in with what we can observe about the world, and does that make sense with the beliefs that I hold, and always be open to new and true information. I think that's a good thing for anybody to, or a good attitude for anybody to have. Just be open to new information. But in the end, you know, it is a choice. Somebody says, I really admire you because you're an amazing teacher and so unselfish with what you know. Love the last video where you talk about the struggles. It's so raw and honest. I may have advice too, somebody's saying, and that looks like they're going to continue up with that. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, there was a video, just kind of a vlog style video. I try to be consistent and post weekly videos, but some weeks I'm busy with other projects. Like I was working on some home improvement stuff, remodeling the bathroom in our house, and the laundry room, and so I just kind of did a impromptu rant about you know, the sacrifices of an artist, that it is a sacrifice, that I've had to sacrifice things, and I would have made more money doing other things if I'd worked as hard as I've worked at being an artist at something like construction or other more easy to monetize fields, that I feel like I would be a lot more financially successful. But that's, you know, a sacrifice. But I feel like maybe I would have been more successful but more miserable, because when I'm not creating, I feel more miserable. So that, I think, is what describes a lot of artists, is they just have to be creating. Let's see, somebody says, I've been working at social media and with some marketing people. I tried to contact branding experts and follow their advice. Maybe a little costly at the beginning, but worth it. Yeah, that's a good idea. In fact, I was just in contact with some people that were like, hey, we're interested in helping. They kind of had something similar where they're saying that they'd help market and create some new stuff. And then I was like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And they're like, oh, we're actually not interested in working with you anymore. So I don't know what happened, like what their reason was for pulling out and saying, oh, we're not interested in working with you anymore. But that is something that I am always trying to learn and grow, and it is a business like any other business, so learning how to sell. Oh, I guess I should mention that the Proco courses are on sale now. So my sculpting courses, the figure sculpting course, the portrait sculpting course, and the new hand sculpting course, which is releasing new lessons weekly. Those are all available at 20% off if you use discount code Summer Sale. If you just go to proco.com and then search for sculpture, there's also links in the description for all of my courses. So if you're interested in sculpting and you can afford those, then I really appreciate anybody that purchases those. And now's a great time because of that sale. It's always nice to get things when they're on sale, and it's a pretty significant sale, and it's one of the few sales that we have throughout the year. So just thought I'd throw that in. And thank you, anybody that does that. There's also my ebooks on the male figure, an artist's X-ray vision, the male figure, as well as an artist's X-ray vision, the female figure. Both of those are available. And if you just go to the link in the description of this live stream and then go to all my links, then you'll see links to my courses as well as my ebooks, and those are under $10 for the ebooks, and that's a big help as well. So I definitely appreciate it, and I want to thank everybody that makes what I do possible by purchasing those things. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the people that support, the patrons that support my educational content. So definitely thank you. Let's see. Somebody's saying, yeah, people are definitely religious spiritual, right? But kind of divided from the whole, kind of divided from the Holy Spirit, have fallen spiritually, but still believe that still believe this or that. Yes, I think that is definitely true. I think we can see that as people, as especially Western civilization has started to move away from Christianity, we see a move back towards pagan religions, so worshiping things like the world, like the earth itself or the universe. People will say like, oh, the universe, what do they say? And they do these things, they do these religious things, but they don't even realize a lot of the time that they're doing it. But they'll say like the universe like wanted me to do this or that. And I always think, well, the universe doesn't care. Like the universe is not alive. It's just atoms bouncing around everywhere. So if that's who you're praying to, or if that's what you're worrying about, the universe or the world, like the world doesn't want us to pollute or things like that. It's like the world doesn't care. It's a rock. The earth is a rock. The reason the earth is important and valuable is because it's our home. It's our home, and we should take care of our home. I think it's good to take care of our home, but we shouldn't worship it like we should worship the creator, the person where all of this comes from. So yeah, I definitely agree that people are religious, but that might mean different things for different people. I think atheists are some of the most willing to proselytize, like to share why they think traditional religions are silly, and they'll be the first a lot of the times to be in the comments and get upset when you say that I don't know, that you think that intelligent design is a better explanation than unguided random mutations as an explanation for how life came to exist and we came to be. And then they're like, oh, well, you don't know anything or whatever. But they're just, spreading their beliefs, just like anybody else, because they're people just like anybody else. Let's see. Somebody says success is something from the material realm. Success can't give you that much of an inner spiritual satisfaction. Yeah, I think financial success especially, that's definitely true, that financial, that we have a spiritual thirst or need for spiritual things that can't be filled with physical material possessions or success. So you'll see that a lot with like celebrities, especially celebrities in the US, where they have millions, they have all the money they could want, they have all of the, what would you say, all of the sexual companions they could ever want or need, and yet they're miserable. They're miserable because there's a spiritual thirst for something that goes beyond this physical world. And I think art itself is a cry for that there's something beyond the material, beyond the clay itself. Like the clay is just material, but then when we shape it in a certain way, we're saying that this material is pointing towards something that's above the material, that's elevated, that's on a higher plane, that's beyond material. What you'd call supernatural. That there's something above nature, super or above nature. And so I think all artists, whether they admit it or not, are basically participating in an activity that cries that there's more to this world than just matter. Because if it was just matter, like why is wax any better in this form than in this form? Like why is this any better than just like wax or just beeswax in a beehive, or even without life, like just, why is clay or rock, powder, why is that any worse or less valuable than a sculpture that's made? And the reason is because it points to something transcendent, something above nature, above the physical material that we can touch, and we resonate with that message, even if we don't consciously acknowledge it. Even if we say, "Oh, well, I'm an atheist, but I just like sculpting or drawing or painting." It's like, well, why do you like that? Like, why? What purpose does that serve if there is nothing more than just atoms bouncing around in a what would you call it? Unfeeling, unthinking universe, randomly, kind of just indifferent. Like, why do you have that urge to create something that you feel so compelled to act upon? I think the act of creation itself is kind of a cry against the belief that we're just material atoms bouncing around in a unfeeling world. Let's see. Oh, I've missed a few. So you can ask some students because the professional people cost too much, but the students are full of ideas and are ready to help. You can hire them as social media interns. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I do like that idea. There's students that can help globally, even some people from other countries that could charge even less. Yeah, that is a good idea when it comes to marketing. I think marketing is something that artists, including myself, don't take seriously enough. Well, though I try, like I really do try to focus on it, but you don't want to be like pushy. So there is a balance to be had. You don't want to be feel too much like a salesman all the time instead of an artist. But I mean, being an artist is being a salesman. Great artists of the past were able to sell themselves to able to sell the idea that their work was valuable to people that had the resources to be able to support their work. Michelangelo is a great example. He was a very good marketer, salesman. Let's see. Let me bring this arm down a little bit. So let's see. How long have we been going? Coming up, so we're about an hour and 10 minutes in. So I'm gonna try to start moving toward the tools. It takes a long time to get to that point. Let's see. Somebody else is saying, I like how even science, like the work of Newton, proved the existence of God by characterizing it as a non-constant particles, but non-believers relying on science don't know this. But yeah, as you just said, it's everyone's own choice, and every choice has its own consequences. Yeah, Newton was a religious believer, and the religious belief in the intelligibility of the universe was a big influence in science. That's why there were so many scientists, especially early on, who were religious, who were Christian, because they believed that the universe was created by an intelligent being that created us in his likeness, and therefore we could understand the universe. It wasn't just something random that was unintelligible, random atoms bouncing into one another, that there was actually some intelligent agent behind it, and therefore, things like laws come from intelligent agents. So like the law of gravity, or the law of what are some other laws? Well, the law of gravity is a good example. And it's like, well, where do laws come from? Who writes laws? Well, people, or thinking beings write laws. So if we have laws, if there's a law of gravity that says that something has to happen, then that infers a lawgiver or somebody that put that law into place. And atheists will say, well, no, the laws just came about through unguided phenomena, or they have now different explanations. The multiverse is a common one for scientists to try to get away of the apparent design in the universe, or the unlikelihood that the universe would be the way that it is without some sort of guiding force. And so they'll just say, well, it's just because like everything that could possibly happen does happen somewhere in some universe, even though we can't ever observe it because these universes will be outside of our universe. So that's kind of the multiverse theory, to try to get rid of the evidence for God, which is that the universe appears to have been designed, or it's very, very unlikely, like basically to the point of it being ridiculous that the universe just happened to have created itself in such a finely tuned way to be able to support life. There's just so many factors that have to be tuned to just the right amount in order for things like stars to form, and gravity to pull planets together, and elements to form, and things like that. And if even one of those things was just a little bit off, the universe wouldn't exist. And so to get around that, atheists kind of say, well, it just happens to be that we're in the one universe that looks like it was designed, but it's not really. And to that, I guess I could say, well, we just happen to be in the one universe, in the multiverse of all the possible universes. We just happen to be in the one that was created by God. But I don't think they like that that rebuttal, or that idea. Let's see. Let me see. I am trying to see where I'm at in the comments. I've missed a couple. Let's see. I know even science. Okay, that one just said it's everyone's own choice. Everyone has, yeah. So everybody gets to choose. So you can't be forced to believe in God. I definitely believe that, and you shouldn't be forced. I don't think religion should try to force people. Somebody says, this is beautiful religious talk while watching my favorite sculpture channel. Couldn't ask for more. Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad somebody enjoys it. Appreciate that. Yeah, I fully agree, Andrew. People just spreading what is comfortable for them to believe in, and will keep denying their responsibility by hiding behind the will of the universe. Well, I guess it's easy to infer motives. So, but I think we should, on both sides of the argument, we should try to stay away from inferring the motives of people. So a lot of the times religious believers will say to atheists that you're just atheist so that you can do all the immoral things that you want to do without acknowledging that there's going to be a consequence to those actions. So that's kind of the framing that religious people put on atheists. But then atheists will come back and say, well, you just can't deal with the reality that there is no God, and so you're just out of fear and basically a wishful thinking. You're just trying to make up a worldview where life doesn't end at death because you can't just deal with the reality. So these are like motivations that we're kind of giving to the other side of the argument. But I think it's better to just try to say, like, well, if I was in your position with your experience, I would probably believe exactly as you do, because you would probably, if you had grown up exactly as they had grown up with the influences that they had, you would probably be just about the same as they are. And so trying to step away from the motivations and just saying, well, let's look at this just as an exercise of like, well, what makes sense? Does it make sense? Or what is more likely? Like, is it more likely that everything, like every living thing, came from non-living, like rocks? That rocks and water, like, turned into people if you just wait a really long time? Is that more likely, or is it more likely that there was some sort of guiding intelligence that pulled life from non-life by designing it? And I think it's more likely that things were designed. But I don't have to, or we don't have to, and I don't think we should try to characterize other people's motives as wrong. I think there are some people that do have perverse motives, but for the sake of argument, I think it's always better to say, you know what, they probably think what they think just because in their position it's a logical conclusion that they've arrived to, even though they may have arrived at the wrong conclusion, which when it comes to atheists, I think they have arrived at the wrong conclusion. So let me grab some more clay. I'm kind of running low. And then we might get into working with some tools and starting to kind of refine and define the details that I'm working on. Somebody says, while God gives the choice, of course, and bad people will hide their evil deeds behind such things as such thinking, so-called God will, but that's, sorry, I'm butchering this. So while God gives the choice, of course, and bad people will hide their evil deeds behind such thinking, so-called God will, but that's what God would really want. I don't know if that's not what God would really want. I don't know if I totally understand. So you might be saying that, well, and this is something that sometimes you hear from religious people. It's like, well, God, I believe in God, and I think God loves me, and therefore I can do whatever I want. He made me the way I am, so if I want something, then he must have given me that desire, even if it's a desire that appears to be against, against Scripture or against revealed truths about God. And because he loves me, I can do whatever I want, and I'll be forgiven. And I think that is a attitude that some people have that are even religious people. But I think that is an incorrect view. I think that actions have consequences, and us religious people, when we talk about sin, we're saying that the path that you're on right now is not going to lead to a good place, and so we're recommending that you choose a different path. But that's not the same as saying, like, what you're doing, I don't agree with what you're doing, and so I hope you get punished for it. That's not the way that we should come at these issues. And I think people on the other side, they'll try to frame it as if that is our perspective, like, oh, you guys just want people to go to hell if they do something that you don't agree with. And it's like, well, we're just saying that bad choices lead to bad places, and so you should probably make less of those bad choices and more of the good choices. That's that's a part of what we're saying. And then also, that as a Christian, that the ultimate example is Jesus Christ, and so listening and following what he said is the way, the truth, and the life, as the scriptures say. may sound crazy, but I've always believed that we are slaves of art. Art is the, let's see. Oh, there's like, what does it say? Open widget. What is that? I've always believed that we are slaves of art. Art is way bigger than all of us, but have trusted. Oh, there's like, what is that? Open widget. There's like something in the way that I can't read and it's not going away. Let's see. Masters are the ones that pull the chains harder. Serving it. So, let's see. Sorry, I butchered that. But I think the gist of what you're saying is that we're kind of like, we didn't choose to be interested in art. It's just kind of something that pulls at us. It's like chains that are pulling us to, but it's not really like a choice we made. And I'd agree with that. I think that is definitely true. I think that's a sense that even non-religious artists have, that art is something that they didn't really choose to be interested in. It just kind of pulled at them from, it's like an outside force that's kind of just pulling on them. And I would say that that's an evidence or something that points us towards, somebody, a supernatural being that gave us that desire to create. And I believe that that's God. But definitely, I definitely feel that, like I've noticed that phenomenon, that it's like something where you're kind of, you're almost miserable if you don't do it. So it's something that you don't really choose to be interested in. You're just interested in it. And somebody says like Bernini or Canova, but we're also helping with our work, and our only duty is to make it better and better. So it's like our talent is not ours completely, but just borrowed. Yeah. Well, that's definitely a common perspective, is that, what we have is given to us. The skill and talent is given to us by God. That we didn't that we don't have everything, or we aren't everything that we are just because of us, but there were some things that were given to us. And with art, it's literally true, because we're able, especially nowadays, we're able to learn from masters of the past, and we weren't there or we didn't discover those things. So we didn't discover the way to represent things naturally, or we didn't discover, at least I didn't discover the canon of proportion that I use to build my wire armatures. I didn't discover the method for building my wire armatures. I didn't discover the techniques that I use for building out the sculptures. All of these things were discoveries by other great artists of the past that I'm able to borrow from. And the same way, you could say, well, our interest in art or those other things, they are also something that is more given to us than comes from us. Yeah, that is an interesting way of putting it, in a way that I feel is accurate. Yeah. Well, this is interesting. I didn't expect for this to be the topic of conversation in this particular live stream, but I'm not complaining. I like to talk about these types of things. I think we need more of these conversations in society, because that's how you gain understanding and test your beliefs in the world. Let's see. I'm going to move the head a little bit forward. So pretty soon I'm going to start to develop the details. I guess I should start on those. So let's go ahead and start texturing the torso, because, and let's just do a little bit more on the head to get it a little bit closer, and then we can start. I like to get the whole sculpture kind of somewhat developed before I start detail work. But I did want to get into the detailing so that I can see how this clay tools with the tools that I have, how it responds to the tools. So let's just go ahead and start. We'll just kind of go for the texture that I typically go with. So yeah, right away, I can tell that this is not, it doesn't tool the same way as just the microcrystalline wax, which I assume it has some. It does have that feel of microcrystalline wax, but it tools very differently in that it doesn't stick to the tools hardly at all. I'm not having any problems with sticking. Kind of reminds me more of a polymer clay, like Sculpting, than it does of a plastiline clay. It doesn't feel oily as I'm working it with tools. Even as I'm working it by hand, it feels very very similar to a polymer clay as opposed to an oil-based clay, which I guess polymer clays also have oils in them, so they're just oils that are kind of baked out as you cook the clay in a normal oven for it to harden. Somebody says, by the way, sculpture's looking great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a fun pose. I'll have to keep going. Maybe I'll try to finish up this sculpture, and then I'll maybe do a more in-depth video talking about this clay, like a shorter video. Somebody's saying, very interesting topic, Andrew. I'd say it's a necessary topic. Thank you for your words on it. And also, I like your info on Newton. Need to research that more. Yeah, he, people don't realize that the people that invented or that came up with the scientific method and other ways of studying the world, they saw it as a way of just learning about God's creation. That's kind of their framework. They're like, well, let's see what the universe that God created is like and how it behaves. Whereas a lot of people today, they'll try to twist that and say, no, like religion was against science because they're like, well, science disproves our religion. But that's really not how the scientists that came up with the scientific method saw science. They saw it as just a way to discover things about the physical world. They believed that God created the physical world, which is what I also believe. And so it was just like studying a computer to try to learn about the programmer of it. And it's not like you're going to learn something inside of that computer that disproves the existence of the engineer that made the computer or wrote the code. And so that's the way I see science and religion. I don't see them as things that contradict one another. They shouldn't. And if there's something that is an observable reality that goes against a religious belief or a religious interpretation, often it's like an interpretation that we have of maybe how something happened, but then if we learn through science that, you know what, it probably didn't happen that way, then I think we should be able to say, oh, okay, well, maybe I misinterpreted this scripture, and maybe it's speaking more metaphorically, or it's speaking more as an analogy rather than a literal description of a historic account of events, rather than a analogy or a symbolic way of understanding things. And I think there's a lot of things that are like that where we should just be open to maybe being wrong. Maybe we're wrong about some stuff. And I think if we're honest, then that humility can help us strengthen our position and embrace truth. I think anything that's true is good and good to learn about. Somebody says, and what you said about the, gosh, what is this widget thing? Open widget? There's like this little tag thing on the comment that says open widget, and it just covers up the part of the comment. What you said about the PA, what is that word? Something, disinformation, spreading the theory of the universe, trying to discredit God. Need to keep my eye on it. Oh, like the multiverse. It's got like this. I don't know what's going on, but it says open widget is like covering one of the words on one of the comments, so that's frustrating. Yeah, your sculpture is great as well, of course. I like the back muscles a lot. Well, thank you. Yeah, this the model's somebody that you can tell has worked a lot on his physique. He claims to be natural. I'll take him at his word that this is not somebody that's been enhanced by steroids, which is very impressive. I've been exercising my whole life and stayed natural, so I definitely encourage being natural. But you know, steroids are something that's more and more common, and it's hard to achieve some of the physiques that have become so popular without some sort of enhancement. So I'm always impressed when people are able to sculpt their own physiques, their own bodies, without the use of performance enhancing steroids, which is possible. It just takes time. It takes time and energy. And okay, let's go ahead. I'm gonna start just pressing here and there. So it's tooling very nicely. Let me switch tools because this is kind of a test. Let me try to use just a variety of different tools that I would normally use. So this one's kind of a loop tool that has a smooth end. It's actually just a paper clamp that I've glued onto a pen, onto the end of a pen. So let's try moving that around, scraping that around the surface, and see how that feels. So yeah, it feels good. Let's see, let's give a little bit more of this indication of the separation between the forms from the abdominals to the obliques on the side. Oh, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see even a little bit more. Let's see, yeah, that looks good. Let me make sure I'm in focus, because sometimes when I zoom it loses some of the focus. Okay. So that one feels pretty good. Let me try some other tools. Let's see. Do I have any? Let me grab some wood tools to see how it works with wood. Let's see, this is a homemade wood tool, kind of fun. Sometimes I like to just grab the clay, little pieces of clay, and then place it on the surface and smooth it out that way. Yeah, it feels good. I think I do like working with it with these metal tools. I think metal tools work really well. Doesn't stick. I think I agree that it sticks less than the Chavant. And so that's something that is a good thing when it comes to clay. You don't want it to be so sticky that you can't work it with tools. That's the issue with if you just use like just microcrystalline wax. It's very sticky. So having this be less sticky is nice. Oh, somebody's saying, yeah, that one, the multiverse. Yeah, the multiverse theory. Yeah, that one. You hear it a lot in, in uh, atheist circles. Though it's just a. Well, I see it as just a way to kind of get around the the observable or the increasing scientific evidence that what we see around us is very unlikely to have happened on its own. Just so unlikely as to be physically impossible. And they'll say, well, the only reason that it is possible is because anything that could ever possibly happens, or anything that could ever possibly happen, happens in some universe somewhere at some point. And of course, the problem with this is that it's unfalsifiable. You can't test this theory. You can't, because we only have access to our universe. So it's something that in order to get rid of one unseen, unknowable God, they have to create an infinity of unseen, unknowable universes to be able to explain away the apparent fine-tuning of our own universe. So, so yeah, there's a lot of, but the more I learn about, science and new scientific discoveries, the more I think, yeah, this isn't something, or biology like microbiology or the DNA information inside a cell, the more I think, yeah, this is not something that is likely to have come about through random, unguided, natural events. Strange that these words got hidden there. Well, they're not hidden. It's just it just says there's something on the screen that just says open widget, and it's like not moving. So any comment that is hidden behind that, it becomes or that part of it. It's just enough to hide a few words, but it becomes hidden behind this thing, and I don't know why. I click on it and nothing happens, so I don't even know why it's there or what's going on. Let's see. So we've got some of the Sartorius. Let's go ahead and add some of those. They're a little bit different of an angle than I laid them in with clay, so let's try this. Just forming. Yeah, this is a fun sculpture, fun live stream. I like these live streams where there's more engagement. That's always encouraging. I have trouble with consistency when it comes to live streams, so I haven't been able to get my schedule to a point where I can do, well, I guess I could if I really prioritized it, but I have a hard time consistently doing live streams like one time or a couple times every week. But when I do them, it's always nice to have some engagement and people asking questions, and I do like when interesting topics are brought up. It's always fun. I think what could be more interesting than the existential questions? Why are we here? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What's the purpose of life? And just to answer those for anybody that's confused, where do we come from? We came from heaven. We lived with God, our Heavenly Father, and we chose to come down here and be tested to gain physical bodies. And why are we here? We're here to be tested to see if we'll choose to do what's right, follow God, make good choices. We're here to learn and grow, to become more like God and Heavenly Father, or Jesus and Heavenly Father by learning from them, by choosing to do what's right instead of what's wrong. Let's see, why are we here and where are we going? So after this life, there'll be a judgment, and I believe in the scriptures it talks about many mansions. In my Father's house there are many mansions, and that means that there's many degrees of glory that people will attain depending on how they live their life and how much truth they were willing to accept and what they did with the truth that they did receive. So I believe that those that, there's a lot of people that have lived that have never heard of Christianity or Jesus Christ, and I believe that those people will have a chance to accept those truths even after, though they won't be forced. Nobody's going to be forced, but everybody will have a chance to accept the truth and agree to the conditions that require us to live with God and Heavenly Father and with our families. And people will have the opportunity to reject those if they prefer not to take on that responsibility. And those are what I believe to be the answers to those questions, though it's questions that a lot of people, for good reason, struggle with, because it seems like they're impossible to answer. I'd say they are impossible to answer if you believe in a materialist, or I should say the answer is just, where do we come from? We came from, we came from random, unguided, natural mutations. And then it's like, why are we here? Well, there's no point to life. It's just to reproduce and then die. Or not even to reproduce, because why should I care why should I care about the morality of evolution? So it's just really whatever you want. And then where are we going? Well, we're going to the earth, and we're going to become worm food and cease to exist. And so nothing that we do ultimately matters, because the fate of the best person that ever lived and the fate of the worst person are essentially the same. That's the materialist atheist. Well, that has to be their conclusion, but they don't like to come out and say those answers because they are so nihilistic. Though it is, if you subscribe to that philosophy, it is the logical conclusion of that natural, unguided, materialistic worldview. Oh. Andrew, have you thought about collabs? There is no one doing that in the sculpture YouTubers or Instagram. Maybe there can be a cool project there. I know a couple that are at your level. Yeah, I have thought about it. And I have done some collaborations with other sculptors in the form of sculpture competitions. So we've done some competitions with other professional sculptors. Not these aren't generally sculptors. Generally, these are professional working sculptors, not people on social media. But I would like to do some collaborations even with just other sculptors with YouTube channel. I really like Eric Arneson, so I'd like to figure out a way to do something with him. Maybe some more sculpting competitions for students out there and people interested in sculpting to kind of test their skills and compete with some other people. I think would be fun to do again. Let's see, Andrew Craft, Stephen Richter, and then the open widget thing is right above the next ones. Could be partners to do it with. yeah, I mean, I follow several sculptors that I really admire on Instagram, and so I'd love to try to do something like that. I think that could be a really cool thing. Something I should look into. Another person saying, Andrew, I was reading before that Chavant NSP is so sticky that uh, that's also a privilege when you need to attach small details. They stick better than with monster clay. Oh yeah, I could see that. Um, it is. I do feel like it's more sticky, so it does stick to the armature better. The Chavant NSP clay. I kind of like the balance that they've reached. So I think like my verdict is that I like Chavant just a little bit better than this medium. If I'm gonna compare the medium to the medium, I haven't tried the hard or soft of this clay. I imagine the soft would be just way too soft for my liking because this is feeling pretty soft and this is just the medium. Um, so let's see. So I'd say that I do think that I enjoy the feel and the workability of the Chavant just a little bit more. It's also just a little bit cheaper, and so if price per pound is an issue, which for me it often is because I really like sculpting and I like keeping the sculptures that I have. I like keeping the originals generally in the clay and then just using new clay. So that means that the price makes a difference. Though if you're reusing it for over and over again and making molds and casting them, then either one is probably fine. Definitely feels like there's less resistance when I'm placing pieces of clay down. It doesn't feel like they stick as much as the medium, the Chavant medium. What else? Let's see. As far as elasticity, let's see. This one feels like it stretches just a little bit more, especially when it's warm. You know, I usually hold the clay in my hand just to warm it up a little bit. So yeah, it definitely has more stretch and elasticity to the clay than Chavant. So if you're looking for a more plastic clay, this is definitely more plastic, meaning that it has more stretch and give before it breaks. I feel like it has more microcrystalline wax, though they seem to have dealt with the issue of the wax sticking to metal, which is nice because that makes it ideal for tooling and things like that. And let's see, let's go and work on the back a little bit. But I see why people like this clay because it is nice. It's a nice clay to work with. I'll probably even try to get an Amazon affiliate link or something when I put up the final video of this, so that you guys can purchase this clay and as a way to support the channel. Those affiliate links help. I've just started to get into doing affiliate links and stuff, and that can, if you're gonna get it anyway, then you might as well, or it helps those. I try to use affiliate links when I see people that have invested the time in making a review of something or something that I know that I'm going to purchase anyway. I think it's just a nice thank you to those people. Yeah, let's go ahead and work on some of these back muscles. Let's see. And I'd like to say that I began understanding the New Testament better after the scientific explanation of the existence of God and the existence told by Stuart Swerdlow. Stuart Swerdlow. I really recommend his videos. Like number 1, history of mind control. Number 2, language of hyperspace. Those do sound interesting. I'll have to look that up. Yeah, I'm always interested in serious thinkers that are that give context. Well, I think anything that's anything that's right and true is worthy of study. There's an article of faith. There's 13 articles of faith in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but one of them is that we believe in being honest, true, chaste, benevolent, virtuous, and in doing good to all men. Indeed, we may say that we follow the admonition of Paul. We believe all things, we hope all things, we have endured many things, and we hope to be able to endure all things. And if there is anything virtuous, lovely, or of good report, or praiseworthy, we seek after these things. So anything that's good, that last part is the part that brought to mind. It's like anything that's good, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're seeking after. Anything that's praiseworthy. So that's why I think, the best way, if you're religious, regardless of what your religion is, the best way to share that is to be great at whatever it is you do and to be the best that you can be in whatever endeavor you devote your life to fulfill, whether that's and it doesn't, maybe that's just providing for your family or working at, construction or being a plumber or whatever it is. Like, just do great work. And I think that is something, if it's praiseworthy. And I think doing good work is always praiseworthy. Doing the best that you can do is always praiseworthy. And I think that's a great thing to go after. Just be the best you can be at whatever it is you choose to engage in. Throwing out some ideas: sculpture competitions when the Arnold or Mr. Olympia is next. Future of sculpture with AI or representation of angels or biblical creatures accurately. Could be fun and viral. Oh yeah, those are really good ideas. In fact, I'm going to take a screenshot because I like all those ideas. And yeah, I could see. I've thought about the biblical, like the angels and things. In fact, there's another sculptor artist, like a famous YouTuber, that did that. I forget his name, but he did like biblical creatures as they were described, like more just like taking the description and taking it more literally, as opposed to what a lot of artists or sculptors of the past have done. Is a more figurative, what would you say, like a more, I don't want to say flowery, but a more maybe tame interpretation of a lot of the descriptions of different biblical, especially Old Testament, like angels and things like that. And they were like, sometimes they were described as pretty fearsome, which I imagine they would be if you're not in a position where you'd want to see an angel. No matter what, they're going to be, formidable. But yeah, that could definitely be interesting. I like that one. Yep, Jaza, is that how it's pronounced? Yeah. He's so fun. Yeah, I've seen a few of his videos. I'm not a I think I'm subscribed, but I'm not a consistent viewer of his channel. But I have seen a lot of the stuff that he's done, and he seems to have he seems to understand the YouTube audience very well, because he's done really good and he's got a large audience, and so I definitely admire that. People that are great at whatever they do, it's always great to see. And his artwork's pretty fun too. He just seems to have a lot of fun with it. Dun dun. So we say, so Andrew, you just said you understand why people like so much monster clay. Can you please once again describe its good points based on your feeling and experience now? So, yeah, that's a great question. So I like that it doesn't stick to your tools. It's a very flexible clay, really versatile when it comes to the temperature, so it'll melt completely, and then that makes it easier to work with as it's warm, and then as it cools down it becomes more firm. So that's just a nice feature about these types of clays. It does tool really nice, so I'd say it sticks to your tools less than the clay that I typically use. And so I haven't had an issue with it sticking to itself. Somebody was saying that that with smaller details it might have trouble sticking to itself. I guess, yeah, I could see that if it's like, if you're trying to put a little piece of clay and not like press it in and blend it in, but just put it there and have it stick. Yeah, I could see that that might be something that that people might prefer, just a little bit more stickiness to the clay. But I think that this is a good balance between having it not sticky enough where it doesn't stick to itself, and too sticky where it sticks to all your tools. I think they kind of erred more towards making sure that it wasn't sticking to your tools, which I think is good, especially for people that like to tool more than I do. Like I said, my style is to try to build up as much as I can with adding little pieces of clay. But if you're somebody that likes to sculpt by removing clay or removing material, then this might be a great option, especially the harder version, which is more like a wax, where you can really tool the surface quite a bit, and I've seen it used with great effect for things like, cartoon characters, or things that are more simplified, smoother planes, things like that. Harder clays are great for that. So the color I also find to be really nice, this gray. The brown I haven't used, but it looks like it looks fine as well. I really like gray right now, and gray muted tones. If it does have color in it, I like to be muted. The green that I usually use is actually mixed with a little bit of tan or brown. I think just tan, so it becomes a little bit more of a soft green than the green that comes right out. So the color I like. I'd like to also maybe do some experiments with, like I said, mixing some of the hard monster clay in with this, and see if I can get it to a consistency that I feel is a little bit firmer. The softness is fine. I think most people would prefer this softness, but I find that I prefer a harder clay than what most people like working with, just for the size that I do and for the type of sculpting that I do. Most people probably would like this, that it's a little bit softer than so just because I'm saying it's soft doesn't mean that it's going to be too soft for you. It's a good consistency, I'd say, for probably most people. And a lot of people have come back to me that have gotten the Chavant medium and said, oh, this is a lot harder than I was expecting. It's kind of hard to work with. And so, and then they have to like warm it up and stuff like that, and they might find that to be cumbersome. So if you like a softer clay, I think this is a great, like a medium, well, this is medium soft clay. This is great. As far as would I recommend it, and will I be getting more of it, I still might like to experiment with it, especially try to test out the hard. But because it's just a little bit more expensive than the Chavant when you purchase it in bulk, if you're purchasing like, 20 pounds or something, I think this is just a little bit more expensive per pound. So I'll probably still be going with the Chavant when it comes to my premium clay that I'm getting, the more expensive clays. So that's kind of my feel after just this first sculpture. Though I do still want to do some more experiments, maybe with mixing it with the hard clay, because that's what I do with the Chavant. So I haven't done that with this clay, and maybe I would like it even more if I did that. Random question, have you ever tried pottery? This is a studio that does extremely anatomical accurate ones that are amazing. You can apply that to your stone sculpts maybe and add another line. Pottery, like so just with natural clay, like a terracotta or other types of pottery type, or those types of clay, use those for sculptures. I have a little bit, yeah, I've done some of those. I haven't done a lot with coil building, though I did do a little bit of coil building with some pottery clay for sculpting. If I had access, I almost purchased a kiln. I'd still maybe like to at some point, but if I had access to a kiln, then I might prefer that, a natural, earth clay that I could fire in a kiln. I might prefer that to the clay that I use, because then you don't have to mold it, you can just fire it. But I definitely would like to do more with natural clays, because I feel like you're kind of reaching back through history to the roots of sculpture more when you're using those traditional clays and firing them. But as far as pottery, as far as making pots, I had a pottery class in college, but I was not a fan, because I felt like, okay, this is really hard, and best case scenario, I have a cup, So I was not a fan. It was very frustrating for me. Okay, so we're at about the 2-hour mark. I think that's where I'm gonna leave it for this sculpture, just for right now. I might come back and finish this up a little bit, but for now I'm going to take a break. I think I've been able to kind of get a better sense of this clay. Again, if you're somebody that likes a medium soft clay that doesn't stick to your tools, that is reusable, that you can use for mold making and casting, silicone molds, and you like the color, then I think this is a great option. I see why it's so popular. Definitely fun to sculpt with. Will it be replacing what I use now? Probably not. I like the cheaper non-dry modeling clay that I get from Dollar Tree for larger sculptures, and that's a soft plastiline oil-based clay. And then for my smaller work, I prefer the Chavant that I typically use. But this was good to try out. I like trying new things, and so maybe I'll do more videos where I try different types of clay. I also would like to do some videos where I sculpt with things that aren't necessarily intended for sculpture, maybe doing some sculptures with plaster or something like house repair plaster that you might use for drywall or things like that. Those might be fun videos, so we'll see what comes out. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for a great conversation. That was really fun, really interesting topics that we've been talking about. And hopefully I'll see you guys soon in another live stream. If you have ideas for videos that you'd like to see in the future, I hope you'll reach out and let me know about those, because I'd love to keep doing more. Let me give you guys just a turnaround look at this sculpture 2 hours in. 2 hours isn't a super long time for a sculpture. Usually it takes a little bit more time to develop things, but I think this is coming along nicely. I like how it textures. I'm excited to keep working on this and keep experimenting, and I hope you guys can stay creative, stay productive, and I'll see you in the next video.